Welcome to Linda's Creative Coiling. Today I'm showing another way to do beads where I'm stitching with one color thread and I'm wrapping my bead sections with a different color. I wanted to use it on this little basket. This is probably going to be a Christmas candy dish. I'm going to donate it to a charity auction. And I wanted little pops of color in my coiling. So the way I do this is, you can see I have it marked where I want my bead to go. I've got my stitching thread right here that I've been stitching with the red. And what I need to do right now is start my little wrapping section. So what I'm going to do is just carry this thread along inside the wrapping. So I've got the end of my white thread. I've got the end right there. I'm going to go ahead and add a pine needle before I get started. I'm going to split my coil with my finger and insert the head of the pine needle clear down deep inside. Twist my gauge to make sure it's tight and full and smooth. What I do here is I'm going to hold that stitching thread right along the top of the coil and put my wrapping thread on. I know that that's 4 stitches out, so I'm going to go ahead and take that out so it doesn't get in my way. Take that out, and I'm going to start wrapping. I'm going to wrap very tight on the first few wraps. Wrap very, very tight until I get out here a little way, 6 or 8 wraps. Now I'm going to use, you can see it's kind of angled across there, and I want my wraps to be back farther, so I'm going to push that way back so that it aligns with my stitch. Now you can see that my stitching thread has buckled, so I'm going to give it a little tug. Give it a tug, push again, give it another tug. Okay, I keep wrapping the tail of that thread in there. I'm going to wrap a bunch of times. With waxed linen thread, you can stack those wraps right up next to each other so that you get a nice smooth wrap. So I'm going to wrap. I'm holding the basket with my left hand. I'm wrapping with my right hand. I'm going to wrap a few. I'm going to use my gauge and push, 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 push. Then I'm going to tug on my stitching thread. Now I can trim that tail off a little bit so I don't have so much on there. Trim that off and then keep wrapping. Now I'm getting close to where my stitch is. You can see that I'm real close there to where my stitch is. But my beads are pretty tall. So I place my bead in there just to look at it. And I need to wrap a little bit more so that I can go clear up over the hole of that bead. So I'm going to wrap just a little bit more. I'm going to wrap a little bit more. And push, 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 push. Push on the bottom. That's probably good. You can see that that is lined up there. I'm going to tug again. I put my bead onto my darning needle. Put my bead on. Now I go, my thread's in the back. I go down through the coil. I'm on the left-hand side of that stitch. And I go clear down to the bottom of that coil, and I come out on the right-hand side of that stitch right there. Come out on the right. And I set it in there, and that looks pretty good. Okay, now I go in on the left-hand side of that stitch, so I'm crossing over that thread. And I come up through my coil and up into the bead. I don't know if you can see that, but I come up into the bead. So I've gone through the bead in both directions. Now I have to swing my thread around to the front. That keeps it straight and in line. Now I pull, one of these threads is loose. See, I can't pull that one tight. One I can pull tight. I pull that tight, pull that tight, pull my thread up, pull it tight again, and pull my thread up and pull it up in there. Now my bead is seated in there tight with no gaps. Okay, I'm going to put in another pine needle. I'm almost out of my white thread, so I'm going to add on a new thread. So I'm going to take my needle off. I'm going to get my thread. I'm going to pull off a length of my white thread. Don't need too much because I'm almost finished with my white. Pull off my white, and I'm going to over wax it with my little thing of beeswax. I had a friend who had beehives for a while, and she would pour off this extra wax for me. She's not doing bees anymore, so I've lost that source, but there are other places where you can get it. Flatten that thread with my nail. I needle the thread. Put the darning needle, the eye of the needle, right down over the thread. I needle my thread. Pull that in. Okay. Now, just for demonstration, I'm going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to lay this across there. So now I have two threads. They're kind of parallel, so they're not bunchy. Take the end of my new thread and lay it on there too. And then I start wrapping over the top. I'm gonna wrap a few times. Wrap a few times. Then I'm gonna squish with my gauge, squish them real tight together. Tug on my stitching thread. Okay, I can trim these ends off. When you're ending a wrap, a color like this, you want to make sure that these ends are trimmed close enough so that you can wrap them all in, so that you don't finish with little ends sticking out. So I'm going to trim those off. Now I have enough space that I can cover that all up. I'm going to put in another pine needle. That was a single. Okay, I'm gonna wrap some more, and I want to keep those ends real straight so they don't get bent and bunchy. Keep those real straight. Wrap those all the way in. I'm gonna wrap those in. See, now they're hidden. Squish and tug. Now I'm not there yet. You can see I've got a little way to go. I had 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches there. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I need to connect into that one right there. So I need to wrap a little bit more and measure. I'm gonna measure. I'm almost there. Maybe 2 more wraps. 1, 2, and squish and tug. Now, this is a tricky part because what I want is for this stitching thread to be down toward the bottom of the coil. So I can just kind of pull it down so it's down there. I'm going to take my wrapping thread, I'm going to go under the stitch from the left to the right, go under that thread. Okay, now there are 2 things I could do here. I could just keep this thread going and try to cover it as I stitch, but I find that that's kind of difficult to do, and I don't like it when that thread peeks out and shows. So I do a little overhand knot. I take my thread and make just a little overhand knot. So I've got a little knot, and then I pull it very, very, very tight. Pull it tight. Pull it tight. Now I take my stitching thread, oh, I got a knot. I always kind of go over my thread so I don't get a knot in it. Okay, take my stitching thread. This time I'm going to pierce the pine needles. So I turn my basket over, I go in on the left side of that stitch, and I'm down about 1/3 of the way in the coil. I go in on the left and I come out on the right. Okay, I take that stitch. Okay, take that stitch. And then I pull it very tight. Pull it very tight and pull down on that one so that that stays down there. Pull, and I pull. Kind of have to have some muscles for this. Okay, I'm going to take another stitch because I want that to be really seated tightly in there. Take another stitch in on the left and out on the right. I'm going to pull them tight again and pull. Okay, now I need to go back and get rid of this wrapping thread. So what I'm going to do with that is insert my needle across, going across, and I'm going way up into that wrap, way up in there, and come out on the back. I'll use my pliers to pull that through. And I'm going to pull that very tight so that it just disappears up in there. Disappears. Now I can turn it over. I can pull it taut and trim it off. Then I can just continue stitching with my stitching thread. There I've got little pops of color. I've got beads, got my Christmas basket, or Valentine's Day, or whatever. So there's another technique of adding beads with wraps, and you can add that to your arsenal of stitches and bead techniques that you know. And I hope you enjoyed this video and will come back and see me again soon. Thanks a lot. Thanks for watching my video. If you'd like to subscribe to my channel, Linda's Creative Coiling, all you have to do is click the subscribe button and then ring the bell. Then you'll get notifications when I post new videos. See you again soon.